Welcome back to Hannity. So this week, WikiLeaks released a new batch of documents allegedly containing information about tactics the CIA uses as part of its surveillance program. Joining us now with reaction, former intelligence official of the U.S. National Security Agency, William Binney, and former senior intelligence officer, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer.
Hey, Sean.
Mr. Binney, let me start with you. One of the things that I have a headline here in front of me, WikiLeaks, CIA uses stolen malware to attribute cyber attacks to nations like Russia. And what they're really implying here is that they would deliberately mimic the hacking protocols of Russia to obfuscate their own works. Do you believe that's true?
Yeah, sure. I think that that's true, as well as I think that a lot of this software that they've gotten to do the penetrations came from NSA, GCHQ, and the other Five Eyes, plus other cooperating countries. And, of course, they gained additional information once they penetrated into people like the Russians and the Ukrainians.
Is it legal for them to do that at the CIA?
Actually, it's not their charter, but they certainly are doing it and have been doing it for many decades. It's nothing new for them. I mean, they have been using signals intelligence for quite some time.
In other words, and well, you do know what happened in the case of General Flynn. That was a felony, a violation of the Espionage Act, even though he did have, in his case, a security clearance. Maybe they could have listened, but it was certainly illegal to release that. Colonel Shaffer, what is your take on all of this? And when the intelligence community, and I'm sure it's just a few people, I have great faith in our intelligence services, and what they do is really dangerous and important.
Precisely.
But if they're leaking information on Americans and using techniques that could possibly spy through our TVs and not allow full encryption of our phones, that's somewhat troubling to me.
Well, part of the deal is all those vulnerabilities, Sean, you just mentioned, the bad guys have too, and this has always been one of my concerns. I've done this sort of thing for a living about the time William was doing it. My concern when I was on the inside is these people, our intelligence agencies, have huge technology and huge power. So that power must be used ethically and focused on the adversary only. What you've seen here, as you pointed out, Sean, it was used against one of our own. Lieutenant General Mike Flynn is a friend of mine. So I first, on a personal level, I think it's horrendous. On a legal level, it needs to be prosecuted. Yeah. So I think we have to understand it's good that we understand these things. It's good we have people who understand the tools, but how you use those tools ethically, legally, and morally is hugely important.
Colonel, if the CIA, in fact, WikiLeaks, now, they have a track record. They've not been wrong in all their years of existence. Right. They've not been proven wrong one time. And I'm looking at these documents. I guess the most frightening thing, if you're in the government, is they release less than 1% of the information they say they have. Right. And they're talking about more powerful surveillance techniques than even the NSA, without checks and balances. Correct. The fact that they build a cyber attack arsenal, that $100 billion came from the Obama years, and that it implies that every single electronic device they are capable of hacking and spying through, and even turning TVs into listening devices. Do you believe that? Do you think the CIA has that capability? And if they do, if there's no check and balance, doesn't that mean we're all potentially subject to living in a police state where the government at will can spy on whoever they want, bribe, blackmail, do whatever they want with that? That's scary.
That is a danger of having this, and unfortunately, Sean, this is one of those few times I cannot comment on what you're asking me. I used to do this for a living. I will say this: I think some of those things are even more powerful than you listed, and that's why ethically, legally, and as William said, you have to be very specific about how you use Title 18 as law enforcement, Title 10 is military, EO 12333, Title 50 is intelligence, which has U.S. person restrictions. President Obama, I have a feeling, didn't care. He just told people to go out and do things, and this is where morally you have to have someone who is at the top willing to do the hard things of saying, it is my job to restrict people from using those things.
We don't have constitutional protections.
Precisely, and this is where we were going. And let me say this, and I don't know if Bill will agree with me or not, ATP 2829, the so-called Russian tool that we used to hack the DNC, Sean, we did it, not me, but our guys. Former members of NSA, retired intelligence officers, use these tools to break in there and get the information out. That's what the Democrats don't want to talk about because it doesn't fit their narrative.
You know that for a fact? You know the Democrats did it, or that former operatives did it? using the malware techniques that they put the Russians' fingerprints on
Sean,
it and make it appear like the
yes.
Russians. In other words, you're telling me this whole Russian story that the media has been running with for months and months and months, that it was our people that did it, and they just put the fingerprints of the Russians on it?
That's right. The whole
You
idea.
have proof of that?
I don't have proof of it, but I'm telling you this is what I've heard, and what I'm trying to telling you is that if you go back and actually talk to people inside. The evidence is not that the Russians did it. The evidence is a Russian tool was used. What I'm saying is concerned Americans who are fed up with the Clintons doing things, I think we're the ones who actually got in there and broke the information out and gave it to WikiLeaks. I've mentioned this to other reporters, by the way, and they don't seem to be interested in going and checking this out because it doesn't, Sean,
Talk to
fit the
John
narrative.
Solomon and Sarah Carter. They want to hear this.
Well,
last question, Mr. Binney.
Yes.
You had told me that you say that every phone call, every text, every email of every American is gathered into metadata right now by our government. Every single call, text, email. Is that true? You know that?
Well, it's not just the metadata, it's the content also. Yeah.
And our government is storing every conversation.
And that's why I wrote that up in a sworn affidavit in support of Jewell versus NSA, challenging the constitutionality of NSA
and you say
collecting
Executive
all this
Order
data.
12333 allows that.
Yeah, Section 23C.
And that is the same one that Obama altered so 16 other agencies could now share in that information
That's right.
of Signet. That is, wow.
If I could point out a greater danger here, Sean, the point is they know about all these weaknesses in firewalls, operating systems, switches, servers, and so on, and how to break into them, and they aren't fixing them. That means that everybody in the world, including all of us here in the U.S., are still sitting there all vulnerable to attacks.
Right.
And they're doing it as you're saying they're doing it as a matter of course, and that's why you left after 32 years at the NSA.
And the point is that they come back to us after an attack and say, well, we need more money for cybersecurity, when in fact they don't fix the problems they already know.
All right,
and so they're not giving us cybersecurity. You know, so
this is worse than any spy novel I could think of. Thank you all for being with us.
They're swindling us.
Thank you, Sean.
All right.
Yeah.